What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Off the Bench, our first real post-NFL season edition where we don't have literally any games to talk about, and we are in full off-season mode. Maddie, how are you feeling? How's everything going?
I'm feeling great. I knew that it was officially the off season whenever I was choosing to watch XFL, and I was like,
Yeah.
I am addicted. This might be a problem.
Yeah, so the XFL is interesting. Look, this is not going to become, I don't think, a podcast where we're talking about, every XFL game week to week, but I do think the XFL is worth kind of diving into what's working, what's not working, just from a differences in the league perspective from it to the NFL. We're going to have a bunch of alternatives to the NFL popping up here soon. I mean, the USFL is kicking off in I think it's like 2 months, so the XFL is going to have some time to shine here. And there are some rules that it's going to make NFL fans and the NFL in general maybe consider adopting in the future. So we wanted to just talk about some of these and, see which ones we like, which ones we don't like. And we've got the 5 really major ones here. Number 1 being the kickoff rule. I think this was, obviously this is the first real rule change we saw in action because it was involved in the first kickoff of the XFL. And I don't really see any downside to this kickoff rule, Maddie. I don't know if you feel the same, but it's just it's a safer version of the kickoff, and that's what the NFL has been trying to find for years. This year, I don't really recall seeing too many issues on the kickoff, at least not ones that are having people rioting for rule changes. But it's still something that's always going to be on their mind. What did you think of the kickoff rules?
I liked it. And also just to kind of pref this little segment off, we know that the NFL has been known to kind of test out things in the XFL before they try to implement it in the league. So if this is one of the things that they're testing out, it makes me really excited because what you end up having is you have guys that are actually trying harder on kickoffs, which is fun to watch. But if you're worried that you are going to go down, of course, you're not going to try as hard. You're going to have that fear in your head. You're going to be a little bit safer. So I think that it's actually going to improve the game from a viewer standpoint as well as player safety.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you want, players to be as healthy as possible and be able to try their hardest within the construct of, the play and the game. And I think this allows for that, which is just nothing but a positive. Wouldn't surprise me to see this added into the NFL in the next few years. Obviously, they're, generally pretty stubborn about making major rule changes, but this is one that I would not be surprised to see because it's, again, a problem that they've been looking to find a solution for years now.
For
So
a while,
it would be very not surprising to see them adopt this at some point. The next one, now this is kind of the most contentious one, and I have pretty strong feelings about this one. So the onside kick alternative. The NFL has also been looking for a way to, find an alternative to this and just do something different than the onside kick just because it is a nearly impossible play to pull off most of the time. I mean, if you catch the receiving team off guard, sometimes you'll be able to get it. But if the receiving team is ready for the onside kick, which they always are going to be in an end of game situation, you're not really going to recover it. But the XFL's alternative to this is instead of 4th and 15 play from your 20-yard line, and it's only available in the fourth quarter. Now, the only available in the fourth quarter part, I do like because that does mitigate the damage that this could do. But here's my issue with this. I just feel like it makes leads far less valuable in the NFL. I feel like this is a rule that can exist in the XFL because the quality of play, quite frankly, is always going to be a little bit lower than the NFL. That's just is what it is. And it's going to be harder to convert these plays. But if you have an NFL game where the Chiefs are down 2 scores going into the fourth quarter, and you know that all they have to do is convert a 4th and 15 to keep the ball for basically as long as they want to in the fourth quarter. I don't know. I'm not going to feel that just feels like a recipe for leads to not mean as much. How do you feel about it?
I see your point, but I also kind of like it. First of all, this is exactly what the Eagles, I believe it was the Eagles, proposed in 2020 that everybody was up and rioting about. So I think it's hilarious that they just waited a couple years and then implemented it in the XFL just to kind of test it out. It was like, okay, it died down a little bit. I think we can sneaky get away with getting this in there. But for me, I think it makes the game more exciting, right? Whenever you don't have one team that's kind of monopolizing their time with the ball, which is, I mean, it's smart. That's how you play the game. And then you drive down and kick. Sometimes it's frustrating, especially for us fantasy players. So that's where it's going to be really exciting is your guys will have the opportunity to go for it. But it's also going to put a heavy emphasis on the defense. I just kind of think this is where the league might be headed, just because we know the NFL loves offense. It loves those big plays. It's how they make their money, right? So I think that there's a good chance this happens. I don't think it's terrible. I actually kind of like it. My question is more, how many of these NFL coaches are going to utilize this? Do you think that this will continue to happen, or do you think that they're going to just try to go with the safe pick?
Yeah, I just think there's a middle ground that needs to be found between, the onside kick and this play, right? Because the onside kick is like too unlikely for teams to recover, and that's what's prompting them to look for an alternative anyway. But I feel like a 4th and 15, like if you're a team with Mike Evans on your roster or any of these players that can go up and just go get the ball, like, do we want to go from, let's say an onside kick is, I don't know, 10% conversion rate if the defense is ready for it. I don't know if that number is accurate, but just for argument's sake, to this play where, they call them 50-50 balls for a reason. If you have a couple of big receivers that can go up and convert on a 15-yard play, do you really want it to be a complete like coin flip basically, or even have it be in your advantage if you have one of those elite receivers? I just think it's going a little too far the other direction. I'm not saying the onside kick is perfect by any means, but I don't know if in the NFL this is what you'd want to see. It just feels like these teams that have, leads going into the fourth quarter in a potential like upset situation, it ends up coming down to the other team has all these crazy weapons and are just converting 4th and 15s over and over again. Just feels a little bit, almost a little too easy. Not that 4th and 15 is easy, but a little too easy for what the circumstances are that it's being brought in against.
I definitely feel like it would have to be modified. It works perfect in the XFL because, as we know, the offenses are not as flashy as what we see in the NFL. They're not as efficient, not as productive. So it does make it more fun to watch when you're not watching consistent 3 and outs. But the other thing is if they do go towards this, they're going to have to clearly define what a catch is. It can't be this vague, generic thing anymore, because what's going to happen is people are going to get madder than hell if they call a penalty on this play and then it's an automatic first down or, like automatic first and goal. It's just that's where we're going to start seeing a lot of people getting pissed off.
Yeah, and I really don't know what the solution is for figuring out what a catch is, because it's one of those things that's like, it's so obvious to fans most of the time at home. Like, yeah, he caught the ball. He had it, like it was in his chest. He had control of it, but they need to have a way to like word it where it's not strictly a judgment call by the refs. And I understand that aspect of it as well. So I don't know if or when we're going to get a solution for that part of it. Hopefully the genius minds at the NFL are working on something, because however we have it right now is not the way.
Not
and I
playing
think
up to par.
No, and I saw people talking about this as well. Like it just puts more of it in the refs' hands, like you said. With that, it's just, you don't want things at the end of games to come down to, we had the holding penalty on the Eagles. You don't want stuff like that to be happening all the time and just creating more opportunities for referees to be the spotlighted portion of the game, the part that people remember. So I think there's some workshopping that needs to be done. I think it's a fun rule for the XFL. I have no issue with them using it, because it is a league that's just meant to be an alternative right now, and they're testing things out and having fun with it, and nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Listen, give me Ben DiNucci to Josh Gordon for the 4th and 15 as often as we can get it. Welcome back, Josh Gordon, by the way. I love what a connection.
I was like, where did he even come from? That's been a minute.
What a connection. Just the meme team of Ben DiNucci and Josh Gordon. It's amazing. The internet's favorite tandem right there. Then you've got other guys around the league, Martavis Bryant, Geronimo Allison. I saw Jordan Ta'amu is playing quarterback here, which this dude is just playing in every league that's not the NFL at this point, because I know he was like the star of the USFL last season. So no, the XFL's had some fun players, and this is one of those rules that I think works for them, may not necessarily work for the NFL, at least not yet. But let's keep going for the rules of the XFL that were kind of put on display. The tiered extra points. Now, this isn't anything that's super revolutionary or new. I mean, this is something that we've seen in flag football at every level for a while, and other youth football leagues. Maddie, would you want to see this implemented in the NFL? Because I mean, this is nothing groundbreaking. All it is, and I say all it is, but it'd be a big deal, is it removes kickers from another aspect of the game. Because in the XFL, kickers, you don't have the option to go for one via a kick anymore. It's strictly these tiered extra points. How do you feel about that making its way to the NFL at some point?
I think it's too much. I think it takes away from the game. I think that it's another one of those things that's perfect for the XFL, because you need a little bit more entertainment. It makes sense, like you said, without the kicker, but I don't like it for the NFL.
Yeah, again, I think I don't mind a modified version of it. I think we keep the extra point via the kick. I think we keep the 2-point conversion. I'm not against a 3-point conversion that you're going for from just deeper back. I'm really not. You go for a 3-pointer from, it's the NFL, so I mean maybe the 15 or the 20, something like that. I'm not against that, but otherwise, no, I don't think we need to completely remove kickers from this aspect of the game. Extra points are something that should be automatic, and quite honestly, for me, it adds to the fun of the chaos if your guy can't make an extra point that is a normal distance. Like, it's like, go get a better kicker, like do something, and it just adds that little extra element to the game. So no, I don't think we need to go to tiered extra points. I think there's a reason that we haven't, with the fact that this isn't a new concept. It's just what the XFL is using. This isn't something revolutionary, and we would have had it by now if that was something that was better than what we've got going.
Right.
This rule I thought was interesting. The double forward pass in the XFL. So it's not a true double forward pass, but it is if you pass the ball forward and the receiver catches it and he's still behind the line of scrimmage, he can throw it forward. So, it's similar to what the NFL has. It's just pickier or less picky, I guess. You can throw it forward even though you're behind the line of scrimmage. How do you feel about this one? This one, I don't know that it's necessary, but I think it's interesting at the very least.
It's interesting. I feel like it's deceiving because I was under the assumption that you get like a double forward pass, that there would be no restrictions whenever I first heard that. And then I was like, okay, once I figured out what the rule is, there really isn't much difference. And to me, I just think it adds one extra thing for the referees to be, or the officials to be concentrated on, that doesn't really make sense, that they may miss other integral parts of the game.
Yeah, I think it's another one where in the NFL, it would look so much different than it looks in the XFL, because you've got these offenses running all these sorts of motions with these crazy fast and elusive players. You got Tyreek Hill, and you got, the Chiefs doing it with whatever guys they're going to bring in, Kadarius Toney, whoever, it doesn't matter. But they run these crazy plays, and then now you have another completely different aspect that defenses have to pay attention to. Like, if you have this pass behind the line of scrimmage, but you see that it's forward, and now you have to be like, oh, shit, are they going to throw it again? Like, you're going to have – it's just going to be such an adjustment that I don't know if it's worth changing such a minor thing in the NFL, but it's something that at least makes the XFL distinct. Again, it's another rule that is just – adds an extra element for them. Don't know that it needs to be added to the NFL, but still fun to watch nonetheless. And then the final rule, final major difference between the XFL and the NFL is their overtime rules. So the XFL, instead, let me make sure I get this right because I believe I have it, but the XFL, instead of playing an actual quarter in overtime, they basically combine like college and the NHL as far as what they do in overtime. So each team is given 3 attempts at a 2-point conversion from their opponent's 5-yard line. The team with the most conversions after those 3 attempts will be declared the winner. So it is kind of like a shootout in the NHL, more or less. If the score is tied after 3 attempts, the teams will continue to alternate single possessions until a winner is decided. How do you feel about this one? Because we've been looking for overtime alternatives. That is another thing the NFL has been kind of searching for. So how do you feel about this one?
I like this one better than the current version that we have. And also, this is selfish. I think you might probably feel the same way. But fantasy football lovers are like, yes, give it to us. We'll take it, please. Any extra yardage, anything that we can get is phenomenal. But I think that it puts it back into – it makes the game a little bit more interesting. It just adds a little bit more oomph, because right now there's nobody who's ever happy with an overtime result. Nobody.
Yeah, I think what I found super interesting about it is I've been worried about establishing a college football sort of overtime system because of, and it's going to sound stupid, but because of like fantasy football implications. It would be insane if you are having guys like stat padding like 3 or 4 touchdowns in overtime, right? Because that's what you alternate back and forth until somebody screws it up, whatever. The fact that they made it 2-point conversions, I think, is super interesting and really mitigates any issues that would come from that. Like, yeah, if you go to overtime and you have, I don't know, Travis Kelce or even Mike Evans again, because he's a jump ball specialist, you have these guys and they score on all 3 of their attempts, like, okay, that's only 6 points total for you in fantasy. Like, I just think it is something that when they're considering overtime rules, I don't care what anybody says, like, fantasy implications are going to be slightly sort of somewhere in the back of their head. Like, it would break the game if they adopted college football rules. You'd have to do something, or at least, I don't know, you may have to not include overtime stats in general in fantasy if that was kind of the thing they did. But if you're doing the 2-point rule, I think it's completely fine. Like, it makes it not insane, so you can at least just go ahead and not worry about fantasy implications. As far as real life, like implications of it, I think it makes a ton of sense. I personally would amend it just a little bit. I think I would have them play an actual quarter first, and then because this is a shootout, right? Like that's what this is. And the NHL even plays a period first before they go to this. I think you play a real quarter of football, maybe loosen up the, we've all had issues with the scoring first would end the game, or it used to end the game. Now somebody gets a chance to answer, but then if you score on the next possession, then it's still over. And it's just kind of awkward when you have overtime games between two teams who are offensively oriented, because it's like, okay, the defenses have been getting cooked all game. They're going to continue to get cooked in overtime. It's just a matter of who won the coin toss, and that's silly. So I think maybe you have some room to amend that a little bit and just go back and forth possession-wise, and then kind of abbreviate it with this little shootout sort of system after the fact if you're still tied. So,
absolutely. And it would take a little bit of pressure off the officials, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's not going to all come down to a call in the end.
Right. Yeah. So I think they're definitely onto something. I mean, it's a lot of different rules in the XFL that the NFL is going to be able to look at and actually see in practice, which I think is the best part of it. The XFL obviously open to working with the NFL to kind of showcase these things and see what works and what doesn't. And I think, look, there's nothing but positives about having other football leagues going on simultaneously. You don't have to watch. I personally don't know how much I'm even going to be tuning into the XFL on a week-to-week basis, because as much as I love football, and I really do, like, I don't mind the little break that we have right now. Like, I'm gonna miss it really bad in probably a month, 2 months, or at least around draft time. I'll definitely be missing the game. But for right now, I'm not the kind of person that needs to be watching football year round, like competitive football. I'm okay with a little break and talking about off season and strategizing for next season and stuff like that.
Absolutely. There's so many moves that happen in the off season, and it keeps us really entertained. And then also the entire month of March we have coming up that's just going to be full of fun basketball. So it's kind of a nice little fun break.
Yeah. So again, like I don't expect this to become a XFL, recap podcast where we're talking about the scores of the games and stuff like that. But I do think it's going to be fun to monitor what's working for them and what's not, and just adapting or seeing how the NFL may adapt going forward. But let's get back to the NFL. So we've more coordinators being named. The biggest one, I think, and this one caught a lot of people by surprise, the Commanders naming Eric Bieniemy their offensive coordinator and assistant head coach. Now, people's initial reactions to this were all basically the same. Why are you leaving the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions, to go to a place where you have the same title? Answer, it's not exactly the same title. He's also getting to be the assistant head coach, and he has a lot more autonomy over his offensive staff. And this feels just like I'm going to go prove it in Washington. Like, it maybe not the situation he would have liked to have this opportunity, and maybe have a little bit more of a cohesive and well-run franchise to be stepping into. But Eric Bieniemy at this point knows that for whatever reason, he's not getting a head coaching gig as offensive coordinator of the Chiefs. He needs to go somewhere and do something different to, I guess, prove himself. But Maddie, what do you make of this move?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, we've watched him get passed up for the past several years now when he should have been heavily considered. And so I think this is him saying, I got to leave to be able to make it, or make a vertical move. And so I think that this is good. He's going to get out of Andy Reid's shadow a little bit. He wasn't able to play call with the Chiefs, and so that's going to be a big change. He's been quoted saying things like he didn't agree with not being able to utilize the run game as much as he thought that they should. So I think little things like that, I think, one, it's hard to walk away from a Patrick Mahomes and that incredible offense, but two, this is going to help him grow. And I think that this was just a decision to help advance his career. And I also think that he's going to have less pressure walking into Washington. Right now, it's a complete dumpster fire. And I know that we kind of talked about it before, but I think there's a good chance that this might be his end, and maybe he might have some inside information that Ron Rivera might not be there forever.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not inside information, it can really just be common sense, right? If they're like, hey, we're offering you assistant head coaching job, okay, everyone and their mother knows that Ron Rivera is on the hot seat in some degree. Like, so whether they told him that or not, like, you're a coach in waiting, they don't necessarily need to. I think he can kind of read those tea leaves himself. But yeah, there's no pressure walking into this situation. And I'll say this. Look, we don't know how Sam Howell is going to pan out. He does look to be the starter as of right now heading into next year. Hey, look, Sam Howell's undefeated. Just keep that in mind. Undefeated, technically. But no, we don't know how he's going to pan out. But I'll say, outside of Sam Howell, this team is not devoid of offensive weapons by any stretch of the imagination. You got Terry McLaurin, you've got Curtis Samuel, you've got Jahan Dotson, you got Brian Robinson, who looked really good at the end of this year. Antonio Gibson's still around. Like, this is a team with weapons that you can get some juice out of, and I'm excited to see what Bieniemy can do if he's calling the plays, and this will show, are you worthy of a head coaching gig at some point?
Yeah.
That's why, like, I think it is a smart move for him. And, you said as tough as it is to walk away from Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Yeah. What he's walking away from is, good chance at more rings and whatever playoff bonuses come his way in terms of contract, because, no matter what kind of success he has in Washington, we're not really going to earmark them for the playoffs. They could get there. They were in contention for a while this year because of the NFC East, or just because the whole NFC East was very successful. But we're not really going to bank on that. He's not going there for that reason. He's going there to try and launch himself to that next level. And obviously, because he's been passed up so many times, he needs to do something.
Absolutely. You got to do something different.
Yeah, so we'll see how it works out for Eric Bieniemy. I thought it was probably the most interesting coordinator move of the offseason so far, because we all expected that if he was leaving, it was going to be a head coach, but that is not the case. Let's move over to the Cardinals now. So the team that lost the Super Bowl also lost both of their coordinators, Shane Steichen going to Indy. We mentioned Jonathan Gannon last show, but we didn't really dive into it too much. He has recently appointed both his defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. DC is going to be the Eagles linebackers coach, Nick Rallis. Offensive coordinator is going to be Browns quarterback coach, Drew Petzing. I do not like the Cardinals. I don't think this is going to work out very well. I was iffy about this hire in general, and now that he's bringing in an offensive and defensive coordinator who are both going to be, I believe, first-timers at those roles, it's not shaping up well. We talked last week about how the Cardinals were one of the teams that we wouldn't be surprised to see at the very top of the draft next season, and this does not do anything to quell my concerns. How do you feel about it?
I agree. I think that there is absolutely zero structure in Arizona right now, and this did not help. You really needed somebody with experience who's been there before, who's been successful, to walk in and say, hey, this is how we're going to execute things, especially when you are a new head coach as well. I don't like it. I think that it's going to be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, and I just don't know if this is the guy to rein Kyler in. I mean, we've seen the video of them meeting together for the first time and whatever. It's all happy and good times. But when push comes to shove, when they get on the field, I don't know that this is going to be a recipe for success. And the Cardinals just seem to be one of those teams that are kind of grasping at straws right now, because they're not a team that's ready to rebuild by any stretch, because they know they have a quarterback that's shown flashes of being a franchise guy when he can be healthy, but at the same time, he hasn't really been able to put it all together. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, and the rest of the weapons around this team are kind of, trending the wrong way. Hopkins isn't getting any younger and has been surrounded by trade rumors. Zach Ertz had a good year, but also went down to a season-ending injury, isn't getting any younger. James Conner, I'll be honest, he's been better than I thought the last couple of years, but also not the most explosive back, like not the guy that you're necessarily excited is your starting running back. He's just kind of the guy that you'll take. I don't know.
Offensive line is built with hand-me-down offensive linemen that have been traded over again. The other thing is they've continued to hire people that this quarterback's not going to respect. You need somebody who's going to pop in and sit Kyler Murray's ass down and say, this is how we're going to do things. Honestly, like, he needs a hard ass who's going to come in and maybe act like a Belichick type to say, this is my team, my offense, and if you can't execute it, then your ass is going to sit on the bench. I don't care how much you're getting paid. Just to, like, wake him up a little bit, because right now he's running it and he should not be.
Yeah, and I'll also say, just looking at the NFC West, it's hard to picture a scenario where this team doesn't finish last in the NFC West. Like, again, because you've got the Niners, who obviously aren't going anywhere. Like, they're built to win every single season, no matter who's at quarterback. The Seahawks just made the playoffs. They're trending in a great direction. They have a ton of draft picks now to play with to build around this newly minted, franchise QB, Geno Smith. Who knew we'd be saying that right now? So weird. The Rams, who I think are due for a big bounce back season, they were basically just torn down by injuries this year.
Yeah,
and so you won't expect that to happen again, at least not to that degree. And the Cardinals are just, like we said, kind of grasping onto what they can and trying to save what they can. And it's not, I don't know. It's not
They don't
looking
have any
great.
direction. There's nothing to build on right now.
Right.
So,
This would be a team I'd feel a lot better about if they were the ones that got like Sean Payton, a guy who can come
yeah.
in and at least assess the situation and maybe initiate that rebuild if it comes down to it. But instead, we got Sean Payton out in Denver, and we've got a bunch of first timers trying to right the ship in Arizona. And I don't think it's going to go well. One note that I did find very interesting was that Gannon was offered more money by the Eagles to stay as their defensive coordinator than the Cardinals offered him to be the head coach. Am I surprised?
Didn't see that.
Yeah. So am I surprised that he turned down that money to be a head coach? Not really. I just think that's very interesting because it shows you how much the Eagles value him and how much they're probably gonna miss him. Because I mean, no matter what we think he's going to do as a head coach, that is just such a major jump that it's reasonable to expect a guy to struggle in his first year or even just struggle in general. We've seen countless coordinators do it, but he was undoubtedly a great fit as defensive coordinator and did a great job with the Eagles this season. Didn't materialize in the Super Bowl, but in general, they love him and they were willing to kind of break the bank a little bit to keep him around. It just didn't end up happening.
I agree.
And then let's see, got a few more coordinators to touch on. So the Ravens hired Todd Monken off of Georgia. I don't know what to make of this one because
I don't either. I was just about to ask you thoughts.
It's so interesting because, he's coming from Georgia, national champion. We don't know whether this connects to Lamar or not. We don't know if this is like a move to try and entice him to stay or if Lamar has indicated that he's staying. So now they're going to get a big brain offensive coordinator to change things. It could be a move totally independent of Lamar. I don't know what this is. I'll just say this. It caught me by surprise.
Yeah, I don't think that he did anything groundbreaking. And it's also kind of just like we can't even peg what type of offense he might run. Are they looking to throw more? Are they looking to just continue to develop the run game? We don't have any data to go off of. We don't know. This is just going to kind of be a wait and see hire.
Yeah, all I will say is if Lamar ends up going somewhere else, watch out for Stetson Bennett here in Baltimore. You never know.
Hey.
Got a little Georgia connection. I would not be surprised. I would expect them to take at least one or two Georgia players or target them at least just because there's going to be a familiarity, like such a recent familiarity that it's worth it. But Bennett's the guy, like we don't know where he's going.
They've been known for doing that too. Not with coaches, but with players. I mean, consistently, they taken just like when I think it was like Orlando Brown Jr. and Mark Andrews were there. They came in and they said, "Hey, tell us about the rest of these guys that you played with at Oklahoma." And then they drafted Ben the next year. So they've been known to do that. Hollywood came in after that. It's just like they listen to the team. Why would they not listen to coaches as well? So maybe that's what they're kind of using him for.
I mean, look, it's never a bad idea to leverage a coordinator hire to get some players from the national champions of college football that have countless NFL prospects on them. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up there. We will see which, if any, Bulldogs are turned into Ravens in about a month. But for now, just the coordinator hire. Thought that was very interesting. The Panthers hired Thomas Brown as their offensive coordinator. So we mentioned last week how, the Panthers staff is a bunch of guys that which I think was crazy because normally you go up and down coordinators and assistants and you don't recognize guys. I wanted to just go up and down and kind of person by person talk about all these guys because let's see what we've got here. We've got on defense, Ejiro Evero is defensive coordinator. Dom Capers, defensive assistant. You've got D'Angelo Hall, assistant for the defensive backs. What else we got? Jim Caldwell, senior assistant, and now they've hired Thomas Brown off of the Rams. It's just a who's who. Oh, sorry, Deuce Staley and Josh McCown. Can't forget them. Deuce Staley and Josh McCown helping with the offense, the running backs and quarterbacks coaches, respectively. Now they add Thomas Brown from the Rams. It's just a who's who of rebuilding a coaching staff, and I just wanted to touch on it and say that I have really high hopes for the Panthers this year.
Do you? It makes me nervous. I did originally, and now I'm kind of thinking – they are not consistent and they're not going to agree on how they want to execute this because all of them are mainly known for being kind of opinionated and bold in what they do. And none of that is consistent across the board. So it's either going to be really, really good or it's going to be really, really bad.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think as much as we talk about, the Cardinals not having that sort of veteran, leadership to kind of steer them the right way, here you've got a coaching staff full of experienced coaches, like former head coaches, at least in Jim Caldwell, and just so many bright football minds that as long as they can figure out a way to coexist, I think I trust them to kind of steer this team the right way, especially in a division as wide open as the NFC South. So
one thing I do think that will help them having this kind of Mod Podge of well-known coaches is the fact that they have all of their former contacts. So if you're trying to get veteran players in for cheap and they have a good relationship with these players still, that's going to be an easy pool to get guys in. So that may work in their favor.
Definitely, definitely. And one more piece of coordinator news. This is not a hire. This is not anything just yet. There's something to keep your eye on. Rex Ryan, interviewing to be the Broncos defensive coordinator. He has said he would only leave the network for a perfect situation. I don't know if he would interpret this as a perfect situation. I don't think it's a bad one. You've got a defense that was the hallmark of the Broncos team that was otherwise a disaster last year, and you've got an opportunity to go work with an all-time great head coach in Sean Payton. But let's ride indeed. Maddie, do you think this is a good fit for the Broncos? Do you think this is a good decision for Rex Ryan if it comes to pass?
I mean, I do think that it would be helpful for the Broncos. I don't know that it's a perfect situation for Rex Ryan. I think that people say that so that they can always keep the door open. They don't want to definitively say, no, I'm completely done. I don't think this is what pulls them away.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll say this. I love Rex on ESPN. I think he's a great personality. He's entertaining. Whether I agree with the things he says sometimes or not, I don't know. But as far as the NFL return goes, I don't know how I feel about it because he did not have much success with the Bills in his last little coaching stint right before he went to TV. And you just worry that, 7 years removed from your last coaching gig, has the game passed you by a little bit? When we won't know unless we see him try, I guess. But is that sort of the risk that the Broncos are trying to take? Like, the Broncos have enough to worry about. They really do. Do they want to also bring in a guy that doesn't have recent success coaching a defense, isn't at the very least an up-and-comer that may be in their system already? It's like you got to worry about so many things, and then you have to babysit and hope that the defensive coordinating side also goes well. I just don't think it's a great fit for the Broncos, even though it's a splashy name.
It is a splashy name. I think that's what it comes down to. But this is a tough division full of motions that you really need some good defensive disguises with, and you got to be on the ball. It's like you said, it's hard to go with a coach who's been out of the game for a minute just because defensively the game's changed enormously in the past 5 years with just even the jet sweeps that they've been running. It's just crazy, like the tight end jet sweeps off the side. I don't know. Your defense really has to be on it. We'll see.
I don't think it's a great fit. I don't think that the Broncos need to keep trying to build this broadcaster all-star team of coaches. Like, you've already got Sean Payton, who you dragged out of the Fox booth. You're trying to drag Rex out of ESPN. I guess just go get Romo as your offensive coordinator at this point because, and I don't know, Mike Tirico can be the water boy or something because we don't need to keep getting these broadcasters. Like, let's go actually in the coaching ranks or somebody that's coached, maybe more recently than when I was in college, because that was longer ago than I'd like to admit at this point.
Only so many resurrections make sense,
Right. They're dealing with one head coach, and granted, he hasn't been gone that long, and I still have no concern about Sean Payton's ability to readapt to the game, but it's like you don't want to worry about that many things at once with a team that just had everything go wrong last year. So not my favorite fit. Moving on to the NFL rumor mill, man, we have barely dipped our toe into the offseason, and we've already got some stuff that's kind of hot off the presses, kind of interesting. So there's a report, and as a Patriots fan, I'm glad we're leading with this. Apparently, Albert Breer says that the Patriots are not in love with Mac Jones and could trade him. The report specifically stating that they don't see a huge difference between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, and that if a team came calling, they would consider trading Mac Jones. I think I'd be okay with it. I do. And it sounds insane, but I think Mac probably, part of the report is that Mac may have rubbed people the wrong way with how he handled things this year with Matt Patricia, even though I can't blame him because it was an absolute disaster. But that is not reflective of the Patriot way that Bill Belichick has instilled in his roster for years and years and years. And it all starts with the quarterback. Like, you need to be setting that example. So Bailey Zappi, we only saw him start 2 games, went 2-0, again, also undefeated, much like Sam Howell. We only saw him start 2 games, but we didn't see any sort of visible frustrations like we did with Mac. So if that's the crux of this, I wouldn't be that surprised. Maddie, how do you feel about a possible Mac Jones trade?
I don't think that it's a bad idea. I think that this whole situation was the Patriots' way of soft launching and saying like, "Hey, we're willing to cut this guy loose if anyone's interested." It's kind of perfect timing, especially before we head into the draft. But no, I agree. I didn't see any improvement in Mac in his continued seasons, and at least with Zappy, he just seems to be a little bit more comfortable, and he handles the game at a quicker level. When we saw that success out of Mac Jones, they were literally taking his collegiate plays and just tweaking them slightly and incorporating them into an NFL offense. Like what we were watching him run was completely basic. And then what we saw happen is his second year in, people knew exactly what to expect from Mac Jones in that offense. And then he was just shaken up visibly throughout the entire season. So I think that they would be better off with Zappy. I think that it would be better than trying to have like a quarterback controversy. Just trade him and try to get some money out of him or some picks or something.
Yeah.
I don't see anything bad with that at all.
And that's the thing to me. It depends all on what they can get for him, because I think the main team that's been rumored thus far has been the Raiders, that if they do strike out on, Aaron Rodgers and anybody else they may be targeting in this weakish quarterback free agent class, that Mac Jones has a familiarity with Josh McDaniels, where he was a Pro Bowler and second in Rookie of the Year voting and had a really great rookie season, all things considered. Go back with that guy and it could be a good fit. I don't think he's going to fetch a first round pick, or I don't even know if he fetches a second round pick after this past season.
I don't think so either.
I just, as a Patriots fan, feel bad indicting Mac Jones for a season in which he was so attached to Matt Patricia leading that offense. It's like, I don't want to be like, okay, this is what Mac Jones is. He was in the worst possible situation you can be in as a quarterback. You have a defensive coach trying to draw up offenses, having absolutely no clue what he's doing. And yeah, it's going to hurt you a little bit. By the same token, part of that report again was that Bailey Zappi, while also maybe not being super far behind Mac Jones talent-wise and skill-wise, he was getting coached the right way and accepting his coaching, I guess I should say. He kept his composure and was just a more coachable player. So I do understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, but I also just feel like Zappy can read a defense and Mac Jones can't. Zappy is much more decisive, whereas Mac Jones almost second guesses himself, and he's too slow. You don't have time to do that in the NFL. And Mac Jones literally cannot read a disguised defense to save his life. He can't. And then he has bad decision making on top of that. So I just kind of feel like talent wise, they may be comparable, but I think whenever it comes down to it and who's a little bit more resourceful and can make the moves on the fly, you're talking about Zappy. And I think that it became very apparent this year whenever you don't have a good offense to fall back on.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I don't believe that Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi will be this team's starter, let's say, 5 years down the line.
Oh, absolutely not.
So it almost, not to say it doesn't matter, because these teams still have to find that out for themselves, but I would not be super opposed to a change to Bailey Zappi, especially if it netted, a draft pick or two that can help in the short term, because this team, no matter who the quarterback is, needs to have weapons to accentuate that quarterback's strengths, hide their weaknesses, and do what you can just to get into the playoffs and maybe compete. Because honestly, most teams that are greatly successful in the NFL get there because they have a top 5 quarterback at the position, or at the very least a guy that played that way in that given season. That's how it is most of the time. Teams like the 49ers can be exceptions to that, even though they haven't finished the job. So maybe that tells you something too. But yeah, the Patriots, if they're not going to have that kind of quarterback, you got to do everything you can to build everything else around them. So I would not be opposed to sending Mac to Vegas if that's what it comes down to. And this report may also just be nothing but smoke and mirrors. We will see how things shake out, especially heading into the draft, because that is when you would think things will heat up a little bit. This one caught everyone by surprise today. Reportedly, Daniel Jones, who just recently switched agents, could be looking to get as much as $45 million a year. Has he lost his mind? This either has to be untrue or he's lost his mind. I don't see any other option.
Yeah, that's just really shocking, especially when one of their biggest players was on a contract year as well. You're talking about Saquon Barkley's, who you're really going up against financially. I they're either just like trying to use this as a ploy, like, hey, we're gonna put this out there, they're gonna think it's crazy, and then we're gonna come in and ask for less, and maybe they'll just give it to us. I don't understand. I don't understand this at all. Like, not
No.
even a little bit. It just doesn't make sense in any way.
No, and we all understand that the quarterback market is constantly going up. That's why you always see guys resetting the market, even if they're not the best quarterback in the league. But look, if Daniel Jones were to get $45 million a year, he would be making as much a year as Patrick Mahomes. He'd be making more than Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins. And look, some of these guys, I understand you have an argument that Daniel Jones could be better than. Like, maybe he is going to be better than Dak. I don't know. Maybe he is going to be better than Kirk. I don't know. But either way, I'll tell you this: those guys are not getting paid those amounts for the production that we saw from them last season. So if Daniel Jones
Correct.
gets paid $45 million a year and doesn't take a gigantic leap forward next year, it is a complete waste. I don't see any way he gets this contract. They are going to franchise tag the hell out of this man. But again, like you said, that complicates things because then you can't franchise tag Saquon Barkley. And so
Correct.
what do you do at that point? So you either, let's say Daniel Jones is hard and fast, wants this big contract, and you want to also franchise tag Saquon, it's like, are you going to pay Daniel Jones that much money?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can. So the Giants are in a very tough spot right now because they have kind of had a similar trajectory this past season as, we love to hype up and talk about the Jaguars. Both teams made the playoffs with new head coaches and seem to be trending up. Well, the Jaguars aren't running into this financial turmoil. They will eventually, in a way, when they have to pay Trevor Lawrence, because that man is going to get paid. If he asked for $45 million a year, I wouldn't think that was totally out of the question, because eventually I think a lot of people expect him to be worth that. But Daniel Jones, there's no world. There's no universe where he's worth that much money. And it'll completely hamstring, whether it's the Giants or any other team, completely hamstring their ability to be a competitive roster if they are devoting that much money to a quarterback who's barely top 15. And I say that after he had a really good year.
Yeah, there's just no way this is going to happen. There's absolutely no way.
No. So I did see a joke that said Daniel Jones meant to ask for $4 to $5 million, but they misheard him because Brian Daboll was eating fettuccine Alfredo too loud. First of all, rude. Second of all, I almost think that's more feasible than him actually asking for $45 million a year. So who knows? Another quarterback news. We've got Jets reportedly love Derek Carr and think he can lead them to a championship, per Jeff Darlington. Now, we've talked about Derek Carr and his possible landing spots a few times. This is interesting, though, because it creates an issue with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, as we know, is not expected to make his decision until after his darkness retreat, and I can't believe I have to keep saying that every week.
So
He's not expected to make his decision until after that, which, if my timeline is correct, is still about 3 weeks from now before it's like his retreat is over, because I don't think he's starting it for another couple weeks. So Derek Carr, who can be signed at any time, the Jets have a decision to make here. Like, somebody may poach Derek Carr. If they really do love him, what do they do? Do they sign Derek Carr and then remove any chance they have of signing Aaron Rodgers in a few weeks? Or do they do they wait on Rodgers? Like, I don't know what their answer is here. It feels like, because they could end up missing out on both is the issue, right? So
Right.
what would you do if you were the Jets?
I think if you like Carr, go after Carr. We've talked about it before. I think that Aaron Rodgers is more of a detriment walking into that locker room than any sort of help. Regardless of how great of a quarterback he was, his experience, he doesn't have the leadership, and he throws hissy fits. He's going to be more of a pain in the ass, and he's going to be helpful to guys who don't respond well to that. You're talking about a locker room who came out and went completely against their quarterback. Granted, he was awful, but came out and was like, Mike F and White, like, they are very vocal. You're not going to be able to walk in there and demand respect without earning it. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a hard time there. So I think that if you can get Carr, you like him, go for it and just pull the trigger.
It's tough for me because I don't read Derek Carr and championship contender in the same sentence and think that it fits.
Yeah.
I don't hate Derek Carr as a quarterback, but I also, I just mentioned how having an elite quarterback is almost a prerequisite for winning a Super Bowl at this point. It's like one out of every 5 or 10 teams can maybe get by without it, but
Yeah.
in general you need that elite quarterback. And I think Aaron Rodgers still has that in him, and
In
Derek
a different
Carr,
system, do you think he does?
I still think he'd have that in him,
You,
and he's going to have
okay.
Nathaniel Hackett as his coordinator if he goes there. So,
That's true.
I don't know. I think the Jets, if their real hope is championship, which obviously they're building their roster to get to that point, I think waiting on Aaron Rodgers isn't the worst move because settling for Derek Carr, I just don't think that gets them there either. I almost think like if you wait on Rodgers and he doesn't end up going to you, right? And Derek Carr signs with, I don't know, the Saints or whoever, and the Jets are like, oh, what do we do at quarterback? If the Jets have to go and bring back Mike White, I don't think they're that much worse off than they would have been with Carr. Like, I still think they're going to be leaning on
I
the
see your
other
point
aspects of
there.
their team. So I don't hate the swing for the fences with Rodgers and wait for him to come out of his little hidey hole and tell us if there's 6 more weeks of winter or not. Like, either way,
So annoying. It's really so obnoxious that we are spending another offseason talking about Aaron Rodgers and his decision. Like,
and he somehow made it more ridiculous, right? Because before we were just waiting on a
yes.
potential retirement announcement, and that is
Yeah.
what it is. It's annoying in its own right because we're just all on edge. But now it's like, okay, we're waiting for you to align your chakras or whatever the hell's going on. So I don't know. I think the Jets would be smart to wait because they're not going to be much worse off no matter who they get if they don't get Rodgers. But we will see. Derek Carr's home is yet to be determined. And then finally, last quarterback news here and last thing off the rumor mill, the Cowboys apparently are intrigued by C.J. Stroud, according to Sports Illustrated. Now, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys have insisted that Dak Prescott is the guy. Maddie, what do you make of this rumor? Is this, where there's smoke, there's fire, or is this just a complete nothing burger here? Do you think there's any chance the Cowboys like or go after C.J. Stroud?
I think that this is just a bunch of BS. I think that it's just
agree.
another one of the things that gives the Cowboys a little bit of attention in the offseason, which they love. But they've made it known that Dak's their guy. And we all know that that organization is loyal. If they think you're your guy, whether you
Mm-hmm.
deserve it or not, if we're looking at Ezekiel Elliott, they've done that for years, does not deserve to be RB1, doesn't deserve to be paid what he's paid. I shouldn't say that. That's his livelihood. But I'm just saying he hasn't lived up to expectations and they still back him 100%. I think that's what we're going to see happen with Dak. I mean, they do it with their coaching staff too. Mike
Yeah.
McCarthy has gotten more shots than I don't even know. He's like that fuck boy that just keeps circling back and you're like, oh, maybe he's changed. Like that's how I feel
Yeah.
about Mike McCarthy. But Cowboys are too
He's
loyal
never
for this.
changed.
Never changed.
No, I agree with you. I think it's funny. As many times as I've seen Jerry Jones say that Zeke is their guy and they're committed to Zeke, every time every time my brain wants to be like, oh, that's coach speak. Like he doesn't mean that. He's not going to end up meaning. He means it every
He means
time.
it every
It's
time.
crazy. Like they've stuck by Zeke like absolutely crazy, and they've stuck by Zeke throughout a time where I've gone from being a big Zeke supporter to being like, oh man, all right, Zeke has lost several steps. Like I don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
The fact that I've converted in between that time. Normally, coaches and stuff will get out ahead of that a little bit, and the Cowboys just have not. So as long as Jerry Jones and the Cowboys are saying that Dak is their guy, I'm going to go ahead and believe them. I don't think that they're going to – it would be a shock for them to tear things down in that way and have to trade a bunch of picks to go up and get C.J. Stroud. Like, that is just a lot. I don't expect that to happen. I think they like him. I think that's probably true, but I think – every team likes C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young to an extent. It doesn't mean you're going to do anything about it. So, no,
Correct.
I think Dak Prescott's going to continue to be their guy, and that is that. All right. Last week, and I think even the week before, we made some early Super Bowl predictions, but I wanted to just jump in, get it on record just in case one of these darts ends up hitting at the end of the year, just because I think it would be fun and people are already looking forward to next season. So we've got Super Bowl picks, and then we've got some award picks: MVP, Coach of the Year, Offensive Player, Defensive Player, Comeback Player of the Year. Gonna wait on Rookie of the Year because I just don't think it's worth doing until these players are on some teams and we can kind of figure out what guys' roles might be. I mean, I can say I love Bijan Robinson and Jackson Smith and Jigba until the cows come home, but it doesn't matter until we see where they end up. So, Super Bowl pick, you guys may have heard it in previous episodes, but I am going Chargers, Eagles, and the Eagles take it home. Maddie, what's yours?
I can't remember who I said. I think I said Eagles.
Was it Dolphins? It was either Dolphins or
I know.
Bengals. You were big on the Dolphins. I know that.
Yeah, and I was also big on the Bengals. I may go back and forth. It's so early.
It's so
we haven't
early.
even made it to the
It's
draft,
100%
so I'm gonna
very
go
early.
Bengals, Eagles. Eagles take it home.
Here's the thing, Maddie.
But
This
we
is
still
such
don't
a
know what's happening with coordinators and stuff. I don't.
right. But here's the thing. This is such a no risk prediction because
true.
if we get it right, we're like we knew back in last February. If we get it wrong, it's like, well, obviously there was so much stuff left that had to happen. So it's just getting it out there, and
It's
then
just for fun.
the magic of editing, we can just be like, we knew all along, because none of you guys listening are going to point back to this podcast, or at least, please don't. Okay.
don't.
Next year's MVP. Look, to go right along with my Chargers-Eagles Super Bowl pick, I'm giving Justin Herbert the MVP award.
Oh, wow.
Not
Okay.
Jalen Hurts. I know. Do you think I was going that way?
Yeah, I thought you were going
He'll be top
Hurts.
3 again. I think he'll be top 3 again, but I'm going Justin Herbert. He makes the leap and wins MVP.
I'm going Hurts. I have to go Hurts. I think that he deserved it this
Okay.
year. Side
I like
note,
it.
I don't know if I said this on the last podcast or not, but I think this is hilarious. I was sitting next to Saquon's parents at NFL Honors. They were like, literally, his dad was right next to me. And when they were announcing MVP, right before he was like Jalen Hurts. And then they announced, he was like, that's some bullshit.
No
I was
way.
like, I agree.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Division rivals too, so that's actually
I know,
there's
that's what I was
obviously
like,
a lot of
wow.
respect there. I mean, they've seen him up close, so they obviously know. They're like, man, Jalen Hurts is absolutely that guy. So
Respect.
all right, Coach of the Year. So this is one that I almost think you can start to predict right now, because you're just looking at Coach of the Year has become a predictable award, right? It's a coach that is going to take a team from bad to good. It's not going to be Andy Reid. We talked about this, like how the award kind of doesn't live up to its name. It's not really the Coach of the Year. It's the coach that made the biggest improvement. So with that team. And for that reason, I'm going to put my blind faith into these damn Denver Broncos again. And I'm going to say Sean Payton, because I know it's a great coach already. We know that. And it's just a matter of what can he get out of this team. I think if Sean Payton drags this team to even just like the 7 seed or the 6 in the AFC, I think he'll get strong consideration for this award. And it's much like what Eric Bieniemy is stepping into in Washington, where expectations are kind of low, like at least from a fan perspective. We just saw Russell Wilson be absolutely horrific. If Sean Payton can get him to be even a fraction of what he used to be and get this team near the playoffs or in the playoffs, I think Coach of the Year is well within range.
I could see that. I'm trying to think if I can even think of one to rival that.
I could rattle off the new coaches for you if you want. If you want to go with a rookie coach, I could tell you those guys.
I don't
list
want to
up.
go with a rookie coach just because
Okay.
that makes me nervous.
Okay.
I'll go with Sean Payton just because I think that would give the league the storyline that they would be looking for, and it would kind of make sense. You're right. It always comes from a guy who built up a team that we didn't expect to be there, and I think that a lot of the other teams that we're talking about that have new coaches, that have coaches going on, it's just not going to be enough of a oomph to get them over it. Maybe Arthur Smith, if he can turn some stuff around for the Falcons.
And it's the one time, speaking of Sean Payton, that you can bet on a guy who is an established and notedly great head coach and have him be coming into a situation where he's not already like recently successful, So it's like betting on somebody that is a very safe bet, and he's just finally able to kind of go after this award, unlike a guy like Bill Belichick or Andy Reid, who's just been in the league so long that they're not going to get consideration. Sean Payton, with his little year off, kind of gets him back in the talks for this. So we will see if the Broncos can bounce back at all. Hopefully they can, because I don't want to look stupid again. All right, Offensive Player of the Year. This year we had Justin Jefferson. We understand that this award at this point is just best player who was not a quarterback. A lot of great offensive skill players around the league now. It's just a matter of which one you think is going to have sort of a career year next year. I am a little torn here. A lot of really, really good players that can make that leap. Like, would I be surprised to see Jamar Chase go nuclear for a season? No, absolutely not. But I am gonna go with Christian McCaffrey for Offensive Player of the Year.
CMC, okay.
I think he's got several more years in his peak ahead of him. He kind of dispelled the injury-prone tag that he had coming into this year, and just being a part of that Niners team, I expect him to be a beast. So I'm going to go with him as my early pick.
That's a great pick, honestly. I think that I'm actually going to go. I'm going to go the opposite of Chase. I'm going to go Higgins. I think Higgins just has a breakout
Wow.
year and pops off.
Wow. Okay. See, I see now you're taking advantage of the no risk here. Nobody's going to come at you if T. Higgins doesn't win it. But if you have this
True.
clip and T. Higgins wins Offensive Player of the Year, contract year, I believe, for T. Higgins, correct? Coming into next year?
Yes, and at the end of the season, what we watched happen is people were doubling up Chase, which left Higgins wide open in some
Yeah.
spots, and so I think that they'll take advantage of that. People are sleeping on Higgins. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we've seen Tua have, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both inside the top 5 for all receiving stats for the majority of the time that he played, no reason that Joe Burrow can't do the same with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, two guys still well in their primes, if they've even hit their primes yet, which is insane to say.
That's scary to think about it and exciting all at the same time.
Terrifying. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go with an easy one here just because I think he's due. Give me Micah Parsons. Hasn't won it yet. Obviously entering his 3rd year in the league. I'm going with Micah. I picked him this year before the season, and he didn't get it. Nick Bosa poached it, but Micah's got to win one of these eventually.
Yeah, I also had Micah picked. Micah has to. I mean, he's the complete catalyst on that defense. He changes the game in so many different aspects. He's got to win it soon.
Yeah, and then comeback player of the year. So as we've seen with Geno Smith, this can mean a few different things. It can mean coming back from injury, coming back from a down season. It's tough because these guys that are coming off of like torn ACLs, it can be a really, really challenging recovery. So I want to pick Javonte Williams. I really do because, again, this awful Broncos loyalty, but I can honestly say unbiasedly he was the most exciting part of their team until he went down offensively. But I feel like at the running back position, he may take a month or two or a lot of the season to get back to his true form and may not really be back there until the season following. I am going to go with a guy who's more of a veteran and that we all know and I think just will bounce back a little faster, Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp gets comeback player of the year. He was doing his thing this year before he got hurt.
That.
I think he gets back there even if Stafford didn't fully recover, like if Baker Mayfield was their quarterback, I think Cooper Kupp will be just fine. So if Cooper Kupp's out there week 1, which it seems like he should be, I think he's got this award in the bag, to be honest with you.
I really like that pick. I'm picking my guy because if he does make it back, this is a hands down, you have to choose him, and it's DeMar Hamlin. I think that if he can make it back into season next year, that award's his.
For sure.
No
much like the Alex Smith when he won it, where it's like you don't even necessarily have to do a lot on the field, but if you're just playing regularly, especially starting again, and he ends up being effective, that's even a bigger bonus, and he's probably got it locked up. So that is a great pick for sure. All right. I think free agency preview, we could probably wait on this because there's so many players and we can kind of make almost an entire episode out of this next week if we want to. The gist of this is that the free agent class is not great, at least in terms of like receivers and quarterbacks and stuff like that. I mean, there's some pieces here and there. There's some pieces on the D-line, the secondary, but overall, this is a weak class, and it's what makes me feel bad for a team like the Chicago Bears, who just have all the cap room in the world and like no one to spend it on. So they need to be, I feel like, getting active in the trade market. But we will wait on the free agency preview.
Yeah, there's a lot to dive into with that.
Yeah, I think we're safe to jump into the viewer questions here and just close out our show that way. So, first of all, will the Eagles get hit with a Super Bowl hangover? This question from JD Ponder 23. I don't believe so. I think having a guy like Jalen Hurts leading the charge like that, who is just such a motivated guy, always trying to get better, I don't think he'll let them have a hangover.
I think that we might see a little bit with the defense just because we're going to have somebody new coming in and there's going to be a lot of movement there. But as far as the offense goes, no, I think that they're going to come out rolling on all cylinders, but I do think that we'll see a slight hangover whenever it comes to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I mean, there is plenty of turnover. We've talked about it on the coaching side. Like both offensive and defensive coordinators are gone. Linebackers coach is gone because he's going with Gannon to Arizona. I'm sure there's other names that may have left that I'm just forgetting right now. But yeah, there could definitely be a hangover from that perspective. I just don't think it'll be one where it's like, oh, they went from, Super Bowl appearance to scrounging to make the playoffs. I think they'll be able to recover from these changes and be just fine.
Won't be as severe as the Rams. We'll say that.
No. As long as hopefully they can stay healthy, because that was the biggest problem.
That was awful.
This question, least favorite player of all time. This question coming from CS Cards. CS, I have a few thoughts here, but I have no choice but to pick Eli Manning. I have no choice as a Patriots fan. And I hate that because he's a likable guy. I'm objective enough to admit that, but what he's done to me twice, I hate him. I hate him so much.
I thought that you were going to go recent bias and choose Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. No, I'll give him a chance to make up for his sins eventually, but if he keeps going this way, then yeah, he might overtake Eli.
I guess I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers with this one. He just gets on my nerves. I've never liked him. I don't get him. It's annoying that he's successful to me. Just all of the things, I'll go Aaron Rodgers. Just a personal pick. I don't get it. Like we're kicking guys out of the league because they had a little bit of THC in their system, but Aaron Rodgers is out there doing shrooms and nobody says anything. I don't know.
Aaron Rodgers is just chewing on whatever colorful plant he can find in the forests of Ghana, and nobody says anything. Whatever.
So dramatic.
And then close it out actually with a fantasy question. So look, guys, we are not opposed to fantasy football questions. Obviously, most of them right now are going to be centered around dynasty leagues because that's the type of league with the most offseason movement and focus. But I don't mind questions like this at all. And of course, it involves my least favorite player recently, as Maddie just mentioned. Would you trade Kyle Pitts and the 107 for the 102 in a 32-man dynasty league? First of all, 32-man dynasty league. Good God. I'm going to say no. I don't think.
I'm going to say no as well.
I don't think you do that. Look, Kyle Pitts, as much as he frustrated me this year, has so much athletic upside. Look, as long as he's in an Arthur Smith offense, I'm going to be a little worried about him, even if they upgrade at quarterback. But you don't package him and the 107 move up 5 spots. I don't think you do that. I mean,
no, not even to move up to 101.
No, I don't think so either. I think if you trade Kyle Pitts straight up for the 102, we can talk because you're going to get, one of several great players. You can, I don't know if this is a super flex dynasty league or what it is, but 32 man, I can honestly safely say you need a quarterback probably. So you can go get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whoever it is, because we all assume Bijan's going to be number 1. But no, I think you are heavily overpaying, and brighter days are ahead for Kyle Pitts. I will admit, I'll get over myself briefly. He will have a better career than this. I don't know if it's going to be next season, but you're in a dynasty league, and in a 32 man, you got to hold on to assets like that.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Tight ends, we talk about how shallow they are. I can't even imagine, especially I'm hoping for your sake that in a 32-man dynasty league, you don't have a designated tight end slot. Maybe it's just more flexes. Because if there's a tight end slot and you've got 32 tight ends out there starting, man, some of you are
That's
down
awful.
bad. And if you have Kyle Pitts in that situation, you are actually living, even though as bad as he was this past year. So
yeah, and I mean, especially it's just you're giving up too much. Hold on to him, and then make it known that you'll consider the trade, because you got to play your cards right here. And then if something happens that he pops off the first couple of games of the season and you think that you can get a better receiver for him or someone better, then trade him then. But that's giving up way too much before we even make it into the season.
Exactly. But that will do it for this episode of Off the Bench, our first true off-season episode. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know what guests you want. Be sure to rate us 5 stars on any place that lets you rate us 5 stars, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Yelp, the Chuck E. Cheese customer feedback form. I don't care what it is. Just be sure to rate us highly. And just let us know what you want to see. Maddie, you got anything else?
I got nothing that tops the Chuck E. Cheese comment.
We got nothing. Send in your Chuck E. Cheese forms, guys. For Madi Kroll, I am Brandon Carney. Thank you for listening, and we will see you guys next time.